He came looking for love, but what he walked into was something far darker than anyone could imagine. On February 2nd, 2025, in a frozen field in Yates County, New York, snow drifts quietly over something that doesn't belong there. A caller reports something wrapped in plastic near a rural roadway, abandoned like refuse. Deputies arrived expecting trash, but what they would uncover was not just a death, but a nightmare that stretched back for weeks. Inside that plastic was a 24-year-old man, a man tortured beyond belief with his life stolen, in a place that should have felt safe. This is the terrifying true story of Sam Nordquist and the 7 people charged with turning trust into unfathomable cruelty. So stay to the end of the video and get to know the psychological breakdown, investigation mistakes, legal analysis, and lastly, the lessons learned about the case. Before we talk about how he died, we need to understand how he lived. Before court, before media coverage, before 7 mugshots. There was a young man named Sam Nordquist who was 24 years old, originally from Red Wing, Minnesota. Friends described him as soft-spoken. The family said he wanted to belong and build something real. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't living dangerously. He was hopeful. And hope can sometimes make us vulnerable. Have you ever trusted someone you met online? Have you ever believed someone when they told you they loved you? Well, Sam did. He traveled to Canandaigua, New York, in September 2024 to meet Precious Nicole Arzuaga, a 38-year-old woman he met online. To Sam, this wasn't a risk. It was a new beginning. But when someone relocates far from their support system, something subtle happens. They become isolated, and isolation can become leverage. The last confirmed contact Sam made to his family was on January 1st, 2025. After that, silence. At first, it didn't feel like danger. Maybe he was busy, maybe adjusting, maybe distracted. But phone notifications echo silence, and days turn into weeks. Family members grew uneasy because Sam calls went unanswered and his messages unread. Family members began requesting wellness checks, but there were unending explanations, excuses, delays. And then the family involved the authorities, and they went and knocked at the house Sam visited. They speak with individuals connected to the residence. Explanations are offered, but something isn't aligning, and in hindsight. The authorities then left the residence, and this is the part that haunts everyone, because this is when he may still have been alive. And sometimes in true crime, the most dangerous period is the one where everyone thinks things are probably fine. Every missing case investigation begins the same way, and that with a time frame. Detectives don't just ask what happened, they ask when did it start. Investigators began reconstructing the final weeks of Sam's, the gap between September 2024 to January 1st, 2025. Phone records, location pings, digital messages, surveillance footage. Exactly February 2nd, 2025. In a rural area in Yates County, New York, deputies respond to a report of a suspicious object wrapped in plastic. Inside was Sam Nordquist. The body was concealed, discarded, and transported away from the alleged residence. That detail alone changes the severity of the case, because concealment implies planning, and planning implies awareness. You don't hide something unless you know it's wrong. Forensic teams secured the scene. Every element becomes potential evidence. Then, the homicide investigation began, and the investigators started reconstructing the final weeks of Sam's life, backward from February 2nd, 2025, the day his body was discovered. The gap between January 1st and February 2nd becomes critical, and then surveillance footage, phone records, witness statements were all investigated. Within days, authorities identify multiple individuals connected to the residence where Sam had been staying. The investigators later alleged that Sam was held against his will inside a residence in Canandaigua. The authorities arrested and charged 7 adults: Precious Nicole Arzuaga, 38, Jennifer Adrian Quijano, 30, Kyle Robert Sage, 33, Patrick Allen Goodwin, 30, Emily Jean Mataika, 19, Kimberly L. Socha, 29, and Thomas G. Eves, 21. That number alone changes the psychological dimension of the case. This was not a spontaneous altercation, but alleged weeks of escalating abuse, and those abuse would be beatings with objects, prolonged physical abuse, sexual assault, starvation, psychological torture. All this happened for weeks, not minutes, not days, but for weeks of continuous suffering. This transforms the case from interpersonal violence to alleged conspiracy. And conspiracy charges are powerful, because under conspiracy law, you don't have to be the one who inflicted the fatal injury. Participation is enough. One of the most disturbing allegations. Authorities state that children ages 7 and 12 were allegedly forced to participate in the abuse. This case forces viewers to confront something darker than the individual violence. How does 7 adults participate to harm another person? This detail shocked investigators and the public alike, because this case suggests coercion, manipulation, psychological control, a deeply dysfunctional environment, and it moves the case beyond violence into systemic breakdown. When multiple suspects are involved, pressure increases, because someone almost always talks, and the first person to cooperate often shifts the entire prosecution strategy. And finally, the case arrived where it was always headed. A courtroom inside Ontario County Court in New York. The air was heavy, not with chaos, but with silence. 7 defendants were brought in, one by one, each escorted by deputies, each wearing restraints, each now facing the full weight of what prosecutors called one of the most disturbing murder cases the country had ever seen. The judge began reading the charges to the 7 people. Each had their own attorney. Each stood silently as the indictment was read aloud. The courtroom listened as prosecutors listed the accusations and the charges included: first-degree murder, second-degree murder, first-degree kidnapping, conspiracy, aggravated sexual abuse, concealing a human corpse. Prosecutors told the judge that 2 children had been present during the abuse. Even more disturbing, they were allegedly forced to participate. The accusation was directed specifically toward Precious Arzuaga. That charge was almost too much for the people in the court to hear, because they pitied the trauma Sam would have undergone. One by one, the judge asked the same question: "How do you plead?" All 7 pleaded not guilty to the charges against them. Because of the severity of the accusations, the court made another decision. None of the defendants would be released. They were remanded to jail without bail while awaiting trial. Deputies escorted them out of the courtroom the same way they entered, in the restraints. But the story was far from over, because the suspects could face possible sentences of first-degree murder charges if convicted. In New York State, the maximum sentence is life in prison without the possibility of parole, because there is no death penalty in New York. The courtroom proceedings you're hearing about were only the beginning. Pretrial hearings continued throughout 2025, and according to court officials, the trials are expected to begin in 2026, potentially lasting weeks, because there are 7 defendants, and there may be multiple trials. But a horrifying question still lingers. Who is responsible for the death of Sam Nordquist? Because a young man named Sam Nordquist vanished into violence, and now the justice system must decide whether those 7 people will spend the rest of their lives paying for it. Now let's dive into the psychological breakdown of the case. When we look at the murder of Sam Nordquist, we are not just confronted with a crime. We are confronted with a complex web of human behavior that defies simple explanation. 7 adults were allegedly involved in the abuse and eventual killing of a young man who had come to New York seeking love. What compels ordinary people to participate in acts of cruelty? Psychologists point to several dynamics observed, and which are isolation and control. Sam was removed from his home environment and support system. Vulnerability and isolation creates a psychological lever for abusers. Dominance hierarchies. Evidence suggests that Precious Nicole Arzuaga may have exercised influence over others, establishing a power dynamic that normalized abuse. Desensitization over time. Prolonged exposure to abuse diminishes empathy. Over weeks, what initially might have been shocking reportedly became routine for the alleged perpetrators. Cognitive rationalization. Participants may have justified actions by minimizing Sam's humanity or using pure loyalty as an excuse. Now let's dive into the investigation mistakes of the case. Even in high-profile investigations, mistakes can occur, and Sam's case is no exception. Noted: investigation mistakes may include delayed missing person response. Initial wellness checks took time to escalate. Sam's isolation may have been overlooked due to assumptions he was an adult making independent choices. Underestimation of online connections. Early investigators initially treated the case as a routine disappearance rather than considering coercive control via online relationships. Evidence preservation challenges, snow and environmental exposure, potentially compromised some physical evidence, although forensic teams adapted. These gaps highlight the importance of quick, proactive action in missing person cases, especially when vulnerable adults are involved. Now let's dive into the legal analysis of the case. The legal framework in New York State provides several avenues for prosecuting a case like this, but it is also complex. But on this case, the 7 individuals are been charged with this, and if found guilty, their potential sentences would be first-degree murder, alleged deliberate, premeditated killing with aggravating circumstances, and the potential sentences are life imprisonment without parole. Second-degree murder, causing death while committing another felony, and the potential sentences are 15 years to life. Kidnapping in the first degree, alleged confinement of Sam against his will, and the potential sentences is up to life imprisonment. Conspiracy, coordination among 7 individuals to commit a criminal act, and the potential sentences is additional cumulative exposure. Aggravated sexual abuse, allegations of forced sexual acts during confinement, concealment of a human corpse, disposal of the body to avoid detection. Because 7 defendants are involved, the prosecution faces a complex task: establishing individual culpability, sequencing events accurately, and linking each participant to specific criminal acts. Until the trial concludes, all defendants are legally presumed innocent. Yet the case remains a sobering reminder of how ordinary trust can be manipulated into unimaginable tragedy. Now lastly, let's dive into the lesson learned in the case. When a case like the murder of Sam Nordquist unfolds, the natural instinct is outrage. But once the headlines fade, the harder question remains, and what do we learn from this? This case leaves behind more warnings, and warnings only matter if we listen. And the lesson about this case are: isolation is a powerful weapon. Sam relocated hundreds of miles away from the people who knew him best. Distance creates vulnerability. When someone moves to start over or to build something new, they are stepping into dependency, and abusers often exploit that so well. So if someone you love suddenly becomes isolated geographically or emotionally, take it seriously. Missing adults still deserve urgency. When an adult goes missing, law enforcement often faces a dilemma. Adults can legally leave. Adults can choose silence. Adults can cut off contact. But sudden disappearance after relocation, especially when communication abruptly stops, is not normal. In many cases, early escalation changes outcomes. So take missing adult cases seriously from the beginning. Patterns matter. Silence matters. Time is everything. Online relationships carry real risk. Sam traveled for love. That is human. But online relationships create unique vulnerabilities because you don't know the full environment and you don't know anyone there. So when relocating for someone, maintain independent communication. share location details with trusted contacts, establish check-in routines. The story of Sam Nordquist is a reminder that the most terrifying crimes often happen in places we didn't expect. If Sam's story touched you and you found this case interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment below because we are all families in this channel. We post crime videos always. Until next time, stay safe and vigilant.